Right. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome to all of you. Thank you for giving of your time this evening to come and share it, spend it with us. And without further ado, uh, let's move into the introduction and let me welcome our very special guest, Tripti Sahni. Now,
Hello.
let me tell you a little bit about Tripti. Tripti Sahni was the founder of Studio Trace. She is an award winning, internationally trained lighting designer. She graduated with a master's lighting design from Parsons in New York. So, everybody in the lighting business must surely know Parsons of New York. They are well known. She was announced as a winner in the Global 40 Under 40 Awards, which selects the most talented and outstanding individuals who work with light as their medium of expression in architectural space. Tripti is the recipient of the Edida Award, El Deco Interior Design Award, for her origami lamp. Now you need to see the origami lamp to really appreciate what it's about. She's nurtured her interest in bespoke product design. The genesis of this was her material explorations during her architectural education at J. College of Architecture, where she graduated with honor. Trained as an architect at Sir J. College of Architecture, she completed her master's in lighting design from Parsons in New York, where she was chosen to work on projects with renowned designers, including Tom Dixon and IKEA. Tripti has won numerous awards and grants. Most recently, she was awarded the Michael Khalil Grant in New York for her work on light and human perception. Her varied international experience on working with light in New York and India have sharpened her project management skills. Tripti balances creative thinking with technical expertise, helping spaces come alive by bringing out the richness of materials, exaggerating scale, and enhancing geometry through modulations of light and shadow. This evening's presentation by Tripti promises to be an enlightening session. Uh, Pardon the pun. Tripti Sahni is delighted to present Light Alchemy, a look at spaces where illumination is just not just functional, but it's emotional, it's atmospheric, and deeply intentional. This presentation explores the subtle art and science of lighting design and how light can shape perception, elevate mood, and define the soul of the space. From sculpting architectural features to enhancing textures and creating dynamic ambiances. Light alchemy demonstrates how thoughtful lighting becomes the invisible thread that ties together spatial storytelling. Discover how layers of light, ambient, task, and accent can be choreographed like a symphony to create immersive environments in luxury residences, hospitality spaces, and experiential interiors. This session will illuminate new ways of thinking about light and how it can be used to connect the past and future. And with those expressive words, we welcome Tripti again and we welcome all of you to this evening and really enjoy it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Philip, for that wonderful introduction and those very kind words. A big thank you to Philip and BHA for inviting me here and for being extremely patient in troubleshooting many small hiccups that we had along the way. I'm so delighted to be here with everyone and show you um, light alchemy through the past as well as the present. Um, I hope I'm clear and that everyone can hear me. Um,
You're
so
very clear.
Super, excellent. Um, so today we're going to be exploring a little bit about light alchemy, right? What do we mean about that? What does that mean to us, right? It's a look at spaces where illumination isn't just functional; it's also emotional, it's atmospheric, it's deeply intentional, and it combines the subtle art and the science of lighting design, and actually how light can help shape the perception, elevate the mood, and define the soul of a space. Um, the genesis of this began with the question: is the instinctive human response to daylight a light reflex? Is it something that each of us is born with? Does this form an unspoken language, common across different cultures around the globe, which is expressed through color, through architecture, and through materials? We call this in the studio the language of light. And let's take a step back. So let's go to the past. This was the very first example of this is a city which is the home of the longest surviving dynasty in the world. And my quest began by understanding how we can design for daylight. There's nothing more magical than coming into a space and finding something extremely unexpected, or spaces which you discover layer by layer, and light definitely helps you do that. Um, Using our imagination and observation as key tools, we wanted to look beyond the design of architecture like shape, form, and expression, and actually see the principle of delight that lies behind it. So, what you're looking at right now is a 300-year-old mansion. Uh, and let's see how the people who designed it and built it actually designed for daylight and delight. All right. So, what you're looking at is a glimpse of the suite that I had the good fortune of studying in, as well as having the opportunity to stay there to be able to see how the lighting experience changes from day to night. What you're looking at are really thick stone walls, the teeny tiny windows. Of course, this helps keep the space thermally insulated. But more importantly, these windows add delight in the series and scales of the views that they offer you. There's a distinct difference in experiencing the room from far away as opposed to when you are sitting far closer and next to one of these windows. And opening the windows, you see snippets of the architecture of the building itself, but you also see the changing patterns of light and shadow as the sun moves across the sky. And the design of these windows really forces you to be very intentional. It forces you to be very interactive and purposeful in how you use the space and inhabit it. It almost dares you to make the effort to sit and actually take time to look outside, because there's no view to be seen just by passively passing through. There are no big windows in the space, which is entirely different from really how we experience most buildings today. In the evening, when you look outside and you look through these really teeny tiny openings, what you'll see would be the twilight of the sky and just glimpses of the twinkling city light, which lie right outside. And the remarkable thing about this design is that you have privacy inside, but you do have connection to the movement, the sounds, and the fading twilight and the fading sunlight that you see outside. If you focus on the semi-recessed arches or teeny tiny niches that you see upwards, you can see how they give actually the most beautiful indirect light to the space, right? So during the day, the solid stone, which looks so imposing, suddenly comes alive in the evening. So this is what the space actually looks like in the ceiling when you're gazing up at it. Um, and you can just imagine going back in time and the magic of the years which have gone by, where Inside these tiny arches, you would have little candlelights placed in each of the niches. And just imagine how relaxing it would be to kind of fall asleep underneath this perfectly fading candlelight. In the morning, when you look up, that's the actual view from the bed is kind of placed within this niche, which is granite with these three openings. And when you look up, it's not bright enough, right? There's just a little bit of light in the space. There's really no color coming through from the stained glass of the lights above your head. If you glance up, you see that the glow isn't strong enough. As the morning progresses, this is at about 8:30 or so, suddenly, this is the view looking up. You see that the walls on either side of you are kind of lit by this almost very deep, very warm orange. And once you look at that saturated color, you know it's time to wake up. You know the sun has risen enough in the sky. If you stay in that place long enough, you probably know what time it is, depending on what month of the year it is. And as you take a step off your bed, you kind of look down and you are greeted by this wonderful, warm, welcoming light reflected off the stone. And it leads you to this niche where you can sit and you can slowly ease into your day. And when you're actually in that niche and you're housed within it, you can see that the stained glass is actually deep set. Each cutout is cast within the thickness of the wall. And so there's a very soft, even glow. The thickness of the wall itself helps cut out the glare. It helps cut out the heat. It kind of lets in a very soft, diffused quality of light early in the morning. There are no harsh shadows, there are no harsh patterns, and it's really done on purpose to help diffuse the light and keep up the heat. You can imagine what a joy it must be for your body to wake up and your circadian rhythm to get set to a lighting atmosphere like this. Um, and this is actually in sharp contrast to the cool, unfiltered light that you see when you step outside after just a couple of minutes, right? So those are large modern openings which are within this Haveli. And you can distinctly see the difference between the purposefulness and the delicacy within which the openings were created and the light was filtered through, and kind of your modern intervention in the space, right? This is a view from the niche looking into the rest of the room. And the grey stone, which suddenly earlier seemed really dark, could be quite imposing. Just by the sunlight coming in through with that warm amber color, looks really warm, really cozy. It's a wonderful way to start your day off. And once you're ready to go outside, you step back out into the lounge, and the same warm white amber light greets you as you step outside. This was the view that you saw. This is at about 10 o'clock in the morning, so it's not harsh at all. And as you turn your head, you're kind of amazed to see that the color of the lamp in your room, which is a warm white lamp, and the color of the natural light, which is coming in at 10:30, kind of evenly matches, right? um, I've just kind of demarcated these so you can actually see the reflected light of the warm white lamp on the white wall and your daylight coming in on your upholstery. And you can see that the quality of daylight, even at that hour where the sun is really strong and cool outside, inside it's still really soft, it's still really diffused, it's still really warm. And then you understand how elements of delight have been introduced in the space, right? The magic of this space is that whoever designed the fenestration or whoever designed these windows really understood the additive power of lighting. They understood the magic that comes with color and light and when they come together. It's the same techniques that you use to use stage lighting, where you use green and kind of orange gels, which are, superimposed on top of light to create a warm amber light without all your fancy color mixing happening, your old school way of stage lighting. It's the same principles that are used here. And of course, the teeny tiny peaks that you see from the city, as you glance through your colored stones, it just kind of adds to the fun and adds to the delight. And glancing out, Once you open your window, you're actually greeted by the color of daylight outside, as it is unfiltered. But you also see the glow. So if you look through the windows, that's how the glass actually looks from outside. And the sun suddenly seems, for me, when I looked at it, it almost seemed like the sun was suspended, kind of broken up and fragmented as tiny bricks of light, just waiting for you to glance upon it. And now you can open all your windows. Uh, and the remarkable thing about them is that, wherever you turn, you have a different glimpse of the city outside, right? So when you go outside, there's a lot of hustle, there's a lot of bustle, everyone's moving. But sitting here and looking out at the city, there's a moment of quiet, but also a moment of connection, right? The city no longer seems imposing. It doesn't seem overwhelming. It doesn't seem busy. It almost seems quite intimate. And you can kind of take a breath before you step outside and face the day. That was designing or our teeny tiny peek into some field research which was designing for daylight. How do we design for seasons, right? How is lighting design in the past, which hasn't really been governed by architects or haven't been governed by lighting design professionals, but just governed by communities who lived there for generations, who understand the climate, understand how the seasons change and how the light changes with those seasons. How do you live? What can we learn from them? A lot of our time based in field research is done in between projects, and for us it really enriches our understanding of light because a lot of these spaces are undocumented, right? I can't even speak the local language that they speak there, so you often, you mediate, you understand with guides, you need to know the right person to go to, you cobble together three languages to be able to understand each other. But what you learn is absolutely incredible, right? So the second place that we visited during our research was actually the meeting point of the rivers and glaciers right up in the Himalayas. um, and here we're studying a 200-year-old house. And we understood actually how different levels of the house are used for different seasons. The level that you see here, what you see on your left hand side, is the entrance to the house. Um, this was not built by any sort of fancy architect or tool or material. This is really 200 years ago. It was definitely using local material. It was the community coming together. It was built over time. It was built to sustain any sort of weather, that, both the really hot summer, which could have rain, as well as the really harsh cold winters in the Himalayas, which can extend for months. And it was built as a family home. um, Family here also means animals, because each family had its own livestock that they took care of. So at the entrance, the photo that you see on your left is actually the entrance to this house. And you can see, maybe right next to the door, this truck of water, right? So in the summer, in the evening, the animals actually come inside. So there's a gap between the gate of the house, then you have a threshold, and then the rest of the building starts. And that's where the animals come. They kind of nestle in, they settle in for the night, they have their water, they have their food. Some in the Himalayas is still quite harsh, right? It's not like some in the city. And the second two photos are what you see when you go up to the roof of this a three-story structure. So in the summer months, the entire family lives on the uppermost floor, which is the terrace floor. Everything that you see is actually a mix of stone and adobe bricks. So it's earthen building. So there's passive cooling and passive cooling elements and strategies which are in place here. But it's wonderful to actually have a look because the materials are all natural, they're all local, they're all handcrafted. Most of them are made by hand, including the bricks, which are sun baked. And every spot of the house is used, right? So even the garments that they wear, they're arranged so beautifully, they're almost like works of art, right, coming together. um, And this is just a glimpse of how the fenestration system on the terrace part of the house works. Because this is where the family lives during the summer months, what you see on your left and your right are actually the same openings. It's the entire facade is made of these openings. The lattice work above lets ventilation through. Um, but when you want to have some privacy, or when you really don't want to have that strong a breeze or that strong light coming through, the opening on your left actually closes into your opening on your right. Now, this isn't through a simple shutter system which latches. Each of the horizontal partitions, which you see on your right hand side, the photo is a close up of that. Each of them actually slide upwards and they occupy the space that you see right above the lattice work. So, portion by
Mm.
portion, you can actually modulate how much light, how much ventilation, how strong you want the view to be, how much privacy you need. Before you had sliding doors, before you had sliding windows, it was totally customizable, and incredible to see, really. And it survived, it's 200 years old. And so, what happens is when you're standing here, that's the view that you're looking at outside, right? So you can decide to see which portion of the view you want to see. You want to look at just the sky, you want to look at just the trees, you want to look at the trees and the mountains. Not only is the window, form of fenestration and lets in light, but it's almost like a landscape painting, right? You're the artist. You can keep changing what you want to see and how connected you want to be to the view outside. During the winter, even the stream which runs through just near the house is frozen. This is, of course, in the summertime when we went to study it. But the winters are extremely harsh. So the entire family camps within the middle floor of the house. You have 3 or 4 generations living within the same space for months at an end. And it's a question that I actually posed to them when I went. I said, doesn't it become really claustrophobic, right? Don't you get really sick of each other? We're so used to having our own space and our privacy, but you have to hear them talk about it. They say, no, it's wonderful. Time really slows down. During the summer months, we're all out, we're doing different sorts of work. You have the farming, you have the gathering, you have the harvesting, you're prepping for the winter months. And so the winter months is really where we slow down, we come together, we spend time together, and we learn from each other. So, this is just kind of a snippet of different things that you see in this room. So, this room is wonderfully organized. It has everything that they need to be able to survive for those 6 months. It has everything. So, what you see on the top is kind of like a stove or the hearth. The second photo on your left is actually a kind of your weaving and your loom, right? So, they actually spin pashmina wool, because a lot of them spin the wool and then make their own garments, which is kind of done, or they weave it. So hand spinning, weaving, it's such a self-sufficient society, so in tune with what's happening outside. It was so remarkable to see, because I live in Mumbai, which is the opposite, right? Like everything is on your phone and through an app, right? So you're out of touch with anything to do with nature, except when the storm comes and hits your window, or the internet services go down, or the streets are flooded and public transportation shuts. So to be able to see how alive and how tuned they are to natural elements and resources and seasons, and how their houses are actually built to be able to support that, and help them do that, was it was kind of life changing for me. uh, and you see that there, even within the room, there are different corners for different uses. So on your right hand side, you have a little table for their morning prayers, their meditation. On the bottom right, you see there's this earthenware. There's a huge container filled with earthen lamps. Right, so they give out heat. They also give out light. It's super easy to just carry and make. You're not worried about glass. You're not worried about anything being fragile or broken. This is, sorry, just a repeat of the earlier, but what I want to take us through now is actually the third space. So we looked at understanding light for, looked at how we design for delight. We looked at how to design for seasons, and now we're looking at how to design for community. These are just snippets. Feel free to reach out to me if you want to know more about any of these places in our field research. I'll only be too happy to share. But the third place that we actually studied was how can we design for community. So this was the very first study we did. This was back in 2017, the end of 2017, the beginning of 2018. And what's really wonderful is that even if you go to these places, a lot of this experience remains true even today because of the way in which these spaces are conserved. So this takes us to the city of forts and palaces. And here, a lot of the study was based on understanding how light and community interact, right? For me, when I actually experienced the city, it almost felt like a carved lightscape, right? You had the sun shading these really tight, narrow linear pathways. But because a lot of the buildings are kind of wrapped around in the corners, when the sun turned, it almost felt like there was a spotlight coming on each of these corner buildings. Like, hi, look at me. Here I am standing in all my glory. It was amazing to see. And so there's almost, you can see the city in the building speaking to you if you only know how to observe and listen to what they are trying to say. When you look up, there's a definite ratio which kind of repeats between the scale of the buildings and the width of the streets. It could look super mismatched. It could look extremely chaotic. But if you walk through the old city, you'll understand that there's a rationale behind it. Uh, these the ratio actually acts similar to a very deep skylight. It cuts off the glare of the hot desert sun, but it lets in all the light down to the street, right? So this was extremely important because the blue city, was and even is even today a very active pedestrian zone, right? So you have people of all age groups traveling through it by foot. Now, if you're walking in the desert, you need to be in the shade. And so this rhythm is actually seen all through the city. It's something I refer to as cracked light.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah.
it's just wonderful, right? And on the few streets where the streets are so wide, a pedestrian can actually find little pockets of shade underneath an overhanging balcony. If there's nothing, you'll always find a line of clothes drying. So you kind of hide beneath that and you'll get like a pocket of shade to just rest before you go on walking. Um, and you notice this relationship between the people in the community and how they interact with this ratio of the built mass to the width of the street, right? It creates shaded pathways for everyone to go around on their daily business. But certain important buildings in the city are much bigger in scale, and so they need some distance to be separated. So even in the planning of the city, your really narrow walkways will suddenly give way, and you'll see actually a plaza or a body of water which would be adjacent to an important building, right? Many different reasons for this, which history gives us, but if you had to observe and imagine and look at how we respond to it in today's time and age, there's a series of vantage points which are open to you to be able to appreciate the architecture. One of them is that you have these really lovely reflecting ponds and lakes, right? Imagine you're sitting there in the afternoon, even in the winter, the sun is too strong, but you really want to appreciate this building. You really want to understand it. It's just too harsh to be able to look at it directly. But you can still study it because you can look down on the reflection of it. It's very still body of water, right? So when the sun is really hot, it's really blazing, you can't look up, you want to shade your eyes. It's definitely, definitely a very intense experience. But you still want to appreciate your surroundings. That juxtaposition of the reflection with the cool water, kind of the sky laid up open to you, it really becomes a spot for you to be able to observe and sit and take pause. It's where the community gathers. Um, but one of the most significant planning features is actually the democratic access to daylight. It's one of the things I miss the most in New York, where you're kind of, I was always running to see where the sun would be, especially in the winter. But it's wonderful to see how there are these interstitial or threshold spaces which are occupied actively by people in the city, because daylight is very much the light of the people, right? They carve out spaces in the shade to be able to run their businesses. They live their lives kind of in full glance of everyone going outside. Everyone takes part in kind of the daily rituals. There's a rhythm to the city, and the patterns of human behavior that you see in the city are actually impacted by this, right? So you'll find that the interiors, especially the businesses which are in the parts of the old city, the insides are really narrow, and often they can be quite dark because there's only one source of daylight. But everyone sits on the threshold, right? So the street becomes really active. It's a great community zone. It's also a form of security because everyone's glancing at each other. There's a sense of pride in their surroundings in the neighborhood, and even if you see the pattern of the way of life, similar to what I saw in the Himalayas, the inhabitants of the city have their own personal relationship with the sun, right, or with light. So they actually start their day by welcoming the sun, right? They'll take moments to greet the sun. One of the gods is obviously the sun god, so you can imagine how important it is. You'll see the two ladies that you see on the right. Actually, they're not reading their newspapers inside. They're sitting outside. They're reading their newspapers. They're perfectly comfortable, and so there are many opportunities for visual contact and conversations with neighbors, which actually leads to a really strongly knit community. Um, you'll see as you walk around the city, even in the public gardens, as the sun goes down, you'll see everyone kind of coming out, families coming out, sitting, maybe having a cup of tea in the garden. Um, Landscape and gardens are kind of quite, no one has their own garden, which is why public gardens are a place for people to gather. You'll see the gentlemen here unwinding, they're playing a game of cards just by the side. And even the clothes, the garments actually responds to the sun, right? So the men keep cool with the turbans, kind of so to prevent the hot sun from hitting their head directly, often because they're out for long periods of the day. And the women are protecting themselves with a ghungat or a fabric, right? Um, and something that struck me, I mean, I don't know how true this is historically, but it just seemed so beautiful that there's a craft there which is practiced, which is called bandhani, which is a pattern textile, a way of dyeing. Um, and the image of the sun to me is kind of also seen in the teeny tiny circles because it's a craft which is formed of patterns created by dots. And it's almost like they've taken everything about what they've absorbed or what they've lived and even woven it into the texture and their art and their garments. So I'm thrilled to say that this has been almost a decade in the making, and we're actually as a studio opening this up to anyone who's interested in observing and studying light in undocumented areas and communities. So we're going to be leading groups with colleges as well as any kind of independent researchers or design practitioners who are interested in knowing more. Our next one is actually happening just a month and a half from now, where we've tied up with the cinematography and film school based in the city to understand. You can imagine how cinematographers of today work with set designers and production designers. But we're taking them back into the past to Asia's largest open art gallery. There's 750 perfectly preserved and restored frescoes for them to understand spatial design and light from a very different context. So this is understanding lighting for cinematography, but with a twist. And where we have upcoming research trips, which are limited to about 8 to 10 people. So the next one happening in June is actually happening back in the Himalayas, and in August we go back to the forts and the palaces. So if it's of interest, feel free to reach out to us on uh, Instagram, email. Philip has, of course, all our contact information.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and we would love to see you. So that was our research. Um, Now we'll talk a little bit about our work, right? So where we come from is we studying all of this really impacts the way in which we design. Lighting for us is extremely personal and kind of responsive to who we're designing for. And the way we look at lighting design in a studio is we think of it as being a little bit like a magician, right? Of course, the reason for this, as we all know, is that light itself is not visible until it hits the surface. Um, and so, unlike brick or stone or concrete or any of those elements, you're designing with something that really you can't even see, right? So, if you look in if you imagine an interior space as a plain gray box with furniture in it, um, as lighting designers, we can make it look 100 different ways just by changing the light, right? So we harness this power of light to completely transform a space. We make it look entirely different at different points of time in the day without ever changing the architecture or the interiors. We do this really by modulating light in four different ways. So the first is direction, or where the light is falling from. Then we have the intensity, which is how bright or dim the luminaires are, the color temperature, as well as the distribution, right? How wide or narrow a beam of light is. And this kind of helps us create different modes. So, looking at one of the projects that we designed, this was a yoga room, which is designed by Studio Hinge. Um, and it's located in the Cricket Club of India in Bombay. And what we did was we wanted to make sure that the lighting design tied into the design language of the space, which is Art Deco inspired, right? So you have access to daylight, like you do, but you also want to make sure that um, the luminaires that you have in the space tie into the language of the space. So wherever we could, we concealed the light. We used a single source of light, but we changed the way in which we housed it, right? Uh, so what you see is that when you're in the space and you're actually doing yoga or practicing yoga, as you move your head from side to side, or you look down and kind of look up back at the ceiling, um, even though the source of light is the same, the effect is very different. And so the space doesn't feel static, it feels energizing, it feels dynamic, um, which is what you want to feel when you're doing yoga. This is the office for Studio Hill.
Sorry, Tripti,
Yes.
what light source did you use there?
Here we just used an LED diffused light, so flexible LED diffused light. So an LED strip light. It was encased in an
What,
LED diffuser, but
a
it was an
neon?
yes, but it was in an opal diffuser, and we actually specced out the kind of diffuser that we wanted because we wanted it to fit within the grooves, but actually twist and turn in certain ways because the ceiling has many curves. So there was a restriction on the groove size that we had to work within, but so that there wasn't any sort of harsh light, right, and the light kind of diffused.
Yeah.
We also changed the wattages around. So even though the source is the same, keeping in mind where and how far the light was, we changed the wattages so the effect that you see would be similar, but actually it's kind of modulated through the wattage. Um, Okay. So what you see here is actually the office for Studio Hinge, who were the same architects who designed the space before. And this is a view of their architectural space. And this is the view of the main cabin. You can see there's a lovely, brightly lit space outside. There's lots of greenery. There's lots of natural light. The dog clearly loves it. Um, and there's plenty of light to sketch and to design with. But this is what happens in the space inside, right? So the main cabin is the only one with the window, and so there's no source of natural light where the team works. Um, and so the intention then was to create a space which makes you feel like you are sitting underneath the skylight. It's very easy to imagine. It's very difficult to execute because this office is actually located on the second floor of a seven-story building. So definitely don't have any sort of skylight coming straight through, right? But instead of having generic downlights in the space that you would normally see in an office, what the architects had done, the principal architect, Pravir Sethi, had created this translucent false ceiling. And the material was frosted, so you actually can't see the supports and the wiring inside. Um, we worked within him to place the light fixtures actually behind the wooden grooves that run through the ceiling. Now, the spacing of this was very important because you can see that the ceiling actually turns and
Mm.
becomes the door into the main cabin. So, we had to work within this linear element in the space that we had between the wooden grooves in the ceiling, and modulate it so that we actually were able to bounce light off the ceiling and then come and diffuse down into the space. Lots of mock-ups to make sure this we got this
Works.
right, and again changing and the diffuser, changing the angle of light actually made a big difference. So it isn't just bouncing up and down; it's actually at an angle so that you don't really get any dark spots, and that feeling of sitting underneath the skylight is actually translated. So it's when you're sitting in the space, the end result is actually something that helps reduce the contrast between the inside and the outside, and it helps create the illusion of a daylit space, which is similar really to the feeling that you would get underneath a bright sky on a cloudy day, which we have very often here in the city. Um, and so when you're inside the space, in the main workspace, there are no harsh or distracting shadows which when you're working, which is often the case with downlights in a very tight space. It's a very comfortable, very soothing light. It feels good. Everyone looks good, and You're able to sketch really easily. And something that we found while we were researching our design for the space is that studies have actually shown that warmer light, which is what we've suggested in this office, actually increases creative collaboration and it reduces conflict. So that's test number one. Um,
Excellent.
um, Thank you. The other way of modulating light, as I mentioned, was modulating distribution. So this was actually this is a place called the Ice Factory in Valid Estate, or IFB, and this was a phenomenal adaptive reuse project. It's within a 140-year-old building that used to house an ice factory, but the architects, Malik Architecture, have actually redesigned this to be a center for design excellence and art, creativity, and conversations, right? So for us, the lighting design of this project was actually an exercise in how to highlight this beautiful existing material palette that you saw within the space, and respond to the very innovative programming, which includes talks, performances, and exhibitions. And when you're within it, um, I'm going to take you through teeny snippets to the space. So at times you'll have pools of light that help guide you towards a piece of art. Um, and then, of course, you stand in front of it, and then you get this really wonderful interplay of light and shadow. Um, when you're in the space, you can see that the same space looks very different depending on the light scene and focusing which is set. So for that musical performance, there was a the rest of the periphery lights were dimmed down, and there was a single beam of light kind of lighting the musicians. Everyone was sitting on the floor. It was an extremely intimate, powerful feeling because this is an ancient string instrument that was being played by the maestro. And so the focus for that setting was really supposed to be inwards and everyone looking towards the center. But for the art exhibition and the photography exhibition that happened in the same space, the focus was outwards. So the lighting was on the walls, and the vertical illuminance was of prime most importance. This is actually modulating intensity is the third way in which we modulate light to transform a space. So this is Native, which is a fine dining Indian restaurant. It's located within the same structure, this 140-year-old building. And it actually has a very existing lighting condition when we came in to light the space. It had ribbed glass windows which filter in and let in daylight very softly. Um, and so, you know, it has an extremely warm material palette similar to what you see downstairs in the inside. There's grey Kota flooring, you have the same Burma teak wooden beams and columns, and you have this red brick um, where the plaster's just been painstakingly scraped away. Um, and so we wanted to retain this warmth even at night, but we wanted during the day, as you see on your left hand side, because it's lit through diffused frosted ribbed glass. The quality of light is really soft, but at night we had the opportunity to really bring out the textures in the space, right? So the different materials that don't get a chance to shine during the day really come alive at night, and you have a bit of drama. um, and so this is the way the restaurant actually looks at night. It's very warm, it's very cozy. um, the color rendering of the light was really important here, right? We wanted to make sure that the space looked very cozy without looking washed out. And so we achieved that by modulating the intensity of light, right? So what I mean by that is even though you have many different types of fixtures in the space, we actually modulated the wattages and the distances really carefully so that within the space it all came together to kind of form hopefully what is quite a harmonious composition, right? Nothing was too bright, nothing was too dim. We achieved this really by layering light across different levels. So there was light at the tabletop, so you could read the menu, you could see your food. Then towards the walls, we wanted to highlight the old Burmati columns that you see. The wiring was fixed, so we actually had very little play in terms of where we could place our fixtures. So we had to make sure that we were very intentional with the type of optics that we gave. So usually the corners of a space can feel quite dark and imposing and feel a bit darker. So we made sure that we had an up and down light given at the corners. And so, it just kind of gave you this beautiful bounced light in the corners, which otherwise just felt completely flat. Um, and when you actually look up into the ceiling, this was our primary focus. There are very few spaces in Bombay where you have access or even buildings which exist where you can see a 140-year-old wooden roof, right? And that's what we wanted the focus of the space to be. So we highlighted it by uplighting it, so that when you're in the space, it really draws your eye upwards. So it exaggerates the scale, it emphasizes the verticality of the space and the beauty of the structure. Um, you can, of course, also think of these three layers as your task, your accent, and your ambient lighting. So this is where the space looks. That's the bar. Um, I have to tell you that the architects were extremely hesitant when we first proposed this to them. They thought it would look too dark and too gloomy. They weren't sure if it would work. There was a thought of having chandeliers in the space. And we really did a lot of mock-ups and a lot of testing. This was also a project done during COVID. So we had a lot of restrictions on how we could actually um, commission the lights in the space and get the team together to do it. But when you work with intensity and you understand intensity, and when you modulate it as a whole, you can pick a focal point, right? And for this, it was the center of the point, which was the bar. So when you enter, you see the bar, and then once you walk past the bar, you see the roof. So there's a journey which you take even as you navigate through the space. And this is the bar right downstairs below this restaurant. Even here, we really wanted to kind of enhance the industrial feeling of the space. So it was the city's only Negroni bar. And here you can see that we wanted again to highlight the beams, right? So we have narrow beams of light kind of shooting on each beam. They highlight the ceiling. Everything else within the space is concealed. So except for your tabletop lights, everything else is built in. We customize the fixtures here. So you can actually see this bar top. I'm not sure if you can see my cursor, but you see that the bar top
Mm.
lit
Yes.
is lit, but the lights are all in your hanging bar inside. So we worked with fabricators here to be able to give that to us and to be able to customize it within the width that we had. Um, All right. Going to another project, which was an art gallery. It's a contemporary art gallery. You move from a very warm space to a very cool and contemporary space. So this is Tark. It's a wonderful gallery founded by Hena Kapadia. Again, I think we're just lucky we get to work with really wonderful buildings which have history. So this is a 100-year-old building. And when you see it from the outside, it seems super warm and welcoming. Um, but when you go inside, you see that the space actually has access to natural light, which is wonderful for an art gallery. And the architect, Katsushi Goto, has designed these beautiful arch doors, and they're centrally hinged. And when he was describing them to us, he likened them to open like butterfly wings, which was just such beautiful imagery, which actually inspired us when we designed the rest of the lighting for the space, because we wanted to have the same feeling of lightness that the architect had designed with these beautiful doors. So we were hoping that our lighting actually personifies the same lightness of being. So we designed what is this very sleek line of light which runs very quietly through the space. At the lower level, it's a track light, and on the upper level, we've custom fabricated this 180-degree diffused profile, which gives light in all directions. Um, and so, what you see, the quality of light can really easily switch from being this very comfortable ambient light, which works well with the natural light in the space, to having this very sharp focus on the artworks within as you kind of traverse, right? And this was wonderful because this was a series of artworks by the artist Daku from a show that was completed last year. And all the four works that you see now are actually composed of the exact pattern of uniformly arranged pins. But because they're exposed to different beams of light, the compositions that are created by the shadows are very different, right?
Mine. Yes.
Um, and so, as viewers move around the work, this 2D pattern, the shadow suddenly becomes 3D. And it's a great example of how, apart from just lighting the artworks, light can really be at the forefront of the artist's imagination when they're actually designing the work as well. Yeah. Okay, now moving from the micro to the macro, this was a ginormous project. It was a 60,000 square foot farmhouse located in Nagpur, where we completed the interior and the facade lighting as well as the landscape lighting. Just going to take you through two or three of our favorite elements, right? So, this was the entrance to the central courtyard. Originally, this was supposed to have a bonfire, but this changed. Um, but we love the idea of a bonfire being at the center of the house. And so we really wanted to retain the idea of a courtyard kind of being the heart or the hearth of the home. And so what we did was we grazed the laterite walls to bring out the brilliant stone texture. And we created this sense of warmth and security, similar that we hoped that you would feel around a bonfire on a cold winter night. Um, and we took a very, very purposeful cue that, as important as it was to light certain parts of the interiors, we also took a deliberate decision not to light other parts of the farmhouse, right? For example, this is the bar by the pool. And here, the lighting has deliberately been kept very subdued, very dark. So you can actually enjoy the subtleties of the surrounding landscape. You see the pool as a reflecting mirror, mirroring the night sky. Um, and we wanted this space to be a space where you could connect with nature, where you could actually distinguish and experience the difference between a full moon night and a no moon night. Um, and luckily, we had clients who were open to that. um, and hopefully kind of the examples that have shown you how you can modulate how projects feel by modulating light. But for us, really, what we modulate or how you come to modulate intention is the most important part of it, of really any project. So the two last projects I'll take you through, one is a study in how to make light invisible, and the other one is how to make everything visible, right? And it really kind of brings out our collaborations. We work super closely with the architect and the and the interior designer to help kind of achieve this. Um, so this was a beautiful library designed again by Studio Hinge. It's designed to make you feel like you're reading underneath the trees. Don't miss the the fallen leaf pattern, which is kind of inlaid into the floor. That was custom, a detail which they worked very hard to bring out. But what for a lighting designer, this project was quite challenging because the architects had created this really intricate forest. There were branches reaching out in different directions. There were canopies crisscrossing around the ceiling. You had extremely delicate architectural sections. You had sleek bookshelves where the shelves were staggered, which meant that any light placed on top would immediately cast shadows in the books and the shelves below, and none of the titles would be visible. Um, and if that isn't challenging enough, we also wanted the lights to be completely invisible so you would not know where the light was really coming from. That was an additional challenge that we gave ourselves. Um, and I think we managed to achieve quite a lot of that. Here you actually see a lot of the architectural lighting is on, but you don't know where it's coming from. So I'll show you how we achieved that. Um, Ambient light was provided by the super wide floods that were mounted actually on the intersecting node of the branches. And the fixture was really carefully chosen because we wanted to make sure that, it had a deep recess and there was a reflector. And so you don't know where the fixture is on, right? It's a dark lens until you stand actually directly underneath it and look above. And the architects created this matching veneer sleeve because the powder coating didn't match the grain. So they created this matching sleeve so it matched the wooden branches on which it was mounted, and so it was better camouflaged. Uh, you then have, we also uplit the canopies. So you have, the reason we did this is because we also wanted there to be a web of shadows in the ceiling, kind of emphasizing the feeling of walking through the groove of trees. Um, and then the last luminaire on the bookshelf that you see is we had to find a very sleek fixture that could fit within the recess of the shelf. And so we actually took the body of a very sleek luminaire, but the optics of an asymmetric fixture, and marry the two. We have to make sure that we got the spacing right because um, the offset from the books, that distance was fixed, right? Because this was crucial to ensure that none of the books had shadows falling on them from the shelves above. Um, Many mock-ups to get this right? And the end result is something that's come together quite nicely. You don't see the fixtures. Everyone from young kids to grandparents enjoy the space. The best part is the library membership has soared, which is, I think, quite rare to see in today's times. And really, there's nothing more I think anyone who was part of the project could ask for. Um, this is the opposite. There we wanted the light to be invisible. Here we wanted the light to be very visible. So this is a retail showroom. It's in the city of Pune, and it's actually a showroom for windows and doors and cladding material manufacturer. But instead of having really normal, boring displays which show the different products, the architect Praveer Sethi actually designed the space to highlight the products themselves, right? So when you look at this is the facade. So this is actually a showroom which is situated in a residential part of town. And we had many discussions on what we wanted the purpose of the lighting and design in the space to obviously be. It had to highlight the products, but apart from highlighting the products, it had to evoke curiosity. We wanted people who were coming by the space, to glance at it, look up, let it stick in the memory, and then we wanted to draw them in. And I wanted them to come up because this was on the first floor and see actually what's within the space. Um, so that's the reason why you see the relationship between the color and the material. So your facade lighting that you see in the corner of the building is the warm wooden light is actually um, lit by a warmer color temperature than the light that you see within the main space. And this juxtaposition becomes very interesting for anyone who passes by, right? Um, and what you see then is when you actually enter the main space, is this is how it looks from the inside, right? So they really designed the space so even though it's a door and window showroom, you don't see any racks of doors and windows. They're actually used within the interior design themselves. And the space has been designed to look like a gallery, and so we lit it to feel like a gallery as well. Um, so we've hidden actually the lights that you see within the rings of wood that you see in the ceiling. And the space gets a lot of sunlight at different points of time in the day, which is wonderful because you get these really beautiful sharp shadows, which keep changing as the sun moves across the sky. Um, but the lighting design took its cue from this, right? So to understand the impact created by the direction of the sun, we wanted to see how we could replicate that at night, right? So this is what we've done during the night, right? So as you can see, the sharp shadows that you get in the day kind of continue at night. And so the language of the space remains the same during the day and night, right? Um, and that's it, more or less. This is a small video, but the link isn't working, but it just kind of covers the moving shadows that you see here and then how it transitions at night.
All right. So once again, Tripti, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. This was
Spend
wonderful.
have a wonderful evening further, and thank you for giving of your time
No,
and
it was a
your
pleasure.
fantastic personality. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. It was so wonderful.
And also to all of you, good night. Have a wonderful evening. The weekend is upon us. All right.
Hurrah.
Cheers.
So,
Join the VLDC. Membership is free. There's not too much you get anywhere in the world that is free. So come on, sign up, become a member of the VLDC. Right. Good night, all. Good night to you. Good night,
thank you.
Tripti. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you. That's all from me.